Dawn is a transition time, so at first light, a hooded crow drops to the fence line, like a black stitch on the border between the field that is entrusted and the field that is not. And in that thin edge of morning, a choice gathers like weather in the bones. Speak or stay silent. Hold the line or let it be crossed. Move now or wait for the right ground to rise under the feet. The air is clear enough to hear the question before it comes into words. What is the battle actually about today? And where is the field? There's no trumpet, no clash of iron, just the quiet pressure of sovereignty asking for right relationship, which is to say, asking for strategy rather than spectacle. This is Lora O'Brien, Irish Mórrígan priest and educator, and today brings a new episode built pretty much from the content of my new book, The Mórrígan, Ireland's Goddess. This is my 8th book, available from all good booksellers online or in real life. And the promise in this book is simple. The promise in this episode is simpler again. We're going to reframe the warrior's path as disciplined planning, ethical courage, and everyday sovereignty without the blood. Blood is important to the Mórrígan, absolutely. Nobody's denying it. But the whole book and this episode come from a lifetime of my native study and practice, and from the Mórrigan's own insistence on getting real information out there so that people like you can build right relationship, not internet myth and bullshit. So let's begin by setting down a clean definition of what war means in the context of the Mórrígan. Because if you're anything like me, when you hear war, your mind might run to like cinematic mud and glory. And if that happens, this learning is going to miss the point. We're not talking bullets and tanks. We're not talking storming the trenches. In the Irish tradition, the Mórrígan is the prophet and poet to the chief. The fighter who steps into the fray for sure. The fixer who puts people and events in their right place. And the sorceress whose workings change outcomes. But she's also the land itself and the sovereignty of a people. And every one of those roles is fundamentally strategic. So when the texts say that she declares victory with warnings and welcomes, that's a template for timing, for speech, for placement, not a license for chaos. The warrior's path in this context is a way of thinking that locates the real field. Where is this battle? And commits us to right action at the right moment for the right reasons. Now, in ordinary life, for me and you and everybody in between, that might look like choosing the necessary conversation rather than the performative argument. It might mean holding a boundary without turning the kitchen into an arena. Or maybe moving a meeting a day because the ground will be better then. Or, the moon cycle or some shit. I don't know. But in each case, the battle is the choice. The field is the relationship. And the victory is in right relationship. So you get to hold those roles in your hand like an Oam Feda. Prophet, poet, fighter, fixer, sorceress, land, people, tua. And you get to feel how they map to action. The prophet poet is not a fortune teller as much as a truth teller who uses really clear speech to shape the field. to ask what needs to be said so that the terms are real and the future is named honestly. The fighter is not brawling. The fighter steps in precisely where presence and courage are required. It's tactical. It's strategic, with the least necessary force, and then steps out. The fixer ensures that the right things happen in certain places and at certain times to certain people. That is logistics, sequence, and consent, all braided into a path, a particular path. The sorceress, the Dree, the user of magic, is the one who wends and weaves, who knows which lever to pull and which door to open to let the outcomes flow without brute force. The land and the relationship between the land, between the worlds, between the people and the land, the sovereignty and the land, all of this is the principle of sovereignty in the Irish context. It's the check on ego. It's the test of whether a decision nourishes the ground and the community or strips it. If I had to choose one single mistake that pulls practitioners and dedicants off course with the Mórrígan, it's taken symbols as superstition rather than as signals. You're getting spooked because you keep seeing crows, right? But corvids in this work are not decoration. They're not an ego boost. They point to attention. They form a pattern that you can recognize. And they are the discipline of watchfulness at thresholds, especially where boundaries press. Think about fences, ditches, gates. We often get accused of gatekeeping, and yeah, we fucking do. We absolutely do, because these boundaries aren't props. They're sovereignty made practical. The lines across which these promises are tested. The edges where consent and consequence live. The land isn't a backdrop in Irish context, in our culture, in our society. The relationship between the people, the land, the rulers, the leadership, and the other world. This is primary relationship, and every oath or plan is measured against its health, because sovereignty is a function of how the land and the people are tended, not how loudly someone claims a title, not how much they want to be president of fucking Ireland or of the United States or wherever else they happen to want to create a fiefdom for themselves. Looking at you, McGregor. When symbols are read as cues rather than omens, practice becomes quieter, steadier, more effective, because your mind gets trained to see placement, to see timing, and for permission instead of chasing spectacle or ego or pomp and ceremony, right? And this is why the 3 pillars of pagan practice, the model that I teach at the Irish Pagan School, at the Mórrígan Academy, at the Ohm Academy, it's my own personal practice that I have provided for others' benefit. The 3 pillars are learn, experience, and integrate. This isn't just like a tidy structure, but it's a way to make strategy into habit. Learning means take in the story of who the Mórrígan is, her mythology, her actual tales, the information that we have, both in our manuscript tradition, but also from the people and practitioners who seek her out. Part of my role when I was managing the Rathcroghan Heritage Centre was guided tours, facilitating people's literal pilgrimage to the Mórrígan's most sacred site, her cave at Cruachan. And from that, I learnt so much. I learnt so much beyond my own perspective. So when I talk about who or what the Mórrígan is, I'm not just basing that on either the manuscript tradition or not just basing it on my own research, my own understandings, my own thoughts or opinions. I'm basing it on the collective evidence of over a decade of watching, listening, dealing with, facilitating, supporting, guiding thousands of people visiting the Mórrígan in her most sacred location, her fit abode, the cave at Cruachan. So learning is not just book learning, but your source has to be correct. Your source has to be accurate. And that doesn't come from one person's opinion. It doesn't come from one book, one text, one experience at a cave. The learning has to go deep. And it means looking at the stories of the Mórrígan, whatever those sources are, those reliable and accurate sources, right? Looking at who she is as a prophet poet, as a fighter, as a fixer, as a sorceress, as a sister, as a shapeshifter, and as the sovereign land. And keeping that learning native and honest and as raw as possible, as close to source as possible. So you're not getting a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of somebody else's fucking opinion. Right? The second pillar, experience, that means bringing the learning into the day, into your day, in small, respectful acts that can be repeated, observed, adjusted. It means doing things, doing the work, experimenting, getting yourself out there, having journeys, having rituals, having group experiences, visiting sacred sites yourself. Those are all the experiences, again, that can be repeated, observed, recorded, and adjusted over time. Experience could be experiment in a scientific manner. And then the third pillar, we integrate. That means writing it down, reflecting, using the wisdom that you have gained to and translating it into the next decision, the next choice, the next action, the next learning, the next experience, the next integration. And you get this work that isn't an event. It isn't a one-time thing. It is this continual cycle that builds your discernment and your confidence and your nerve. This cycle is the spine of the book that I've written. It's the spine of the classes that I teach, the content I create, and it's the spine of a life that is moving towards right relationship with the Mórrígan, Ireland's goddess. So, practical, right? Here is a 5-minute sovereignty check-in to make all of this actionable safely, alone, or wherever the day finds you, right? So step 1, ground and arrive. Just sit or stand with that spine like a standing stone, buried deep in the earth. Take 3 slow breaths and make sure that you breathe them out completely and fully. When you think you've breathed it all out, go again, because there's more that you can release. So make sure you breathe out fully. It's just as much as an important It's just as important, if not more so, as taking a deep breath in, right? So these 3 slow breaths, and silently name the place where you are by its ordinary name to remind the body that it belongs to the land, not to the scroll, right? Now the place is your field. The place is your battle, right? So, where are you physically? Name that first. Step 2, name the field. In a single clear sentence, define the battle of the day in terms of relationship, not drama. For example, hold the start time I promised myself. Ask for a later deadline with honesty. Say no to the extra task without having to apologise for it. What is the battle? Getting in touch with my politicians to make sure that chaos does not ensue. Going on a protest, writing a letter, using your voice, right? All of those could be your battle for the day and more. Getting out of bed could be your battle. That's okay too. Everybody, you are meeting yourself where you are, honestly, with no guilt, no shame, just this is where I'm at right now. So, step 1, ground and arrive. You're going to sit or stand with a spine like a stone. Take your 3 slow breaths. Name the place where you physically are. And then step 2, name the field. Define your battle of the day. Just today's battle. Now, step 3, run the roles. You can pick one or go through all of them if you want. But just for example, acting as prophet poet, ask, what truth must be spoken or written so the field is real? As fighter, ask, what is the least necessary act of courage that changes the ground? As fixer sorceress, ask, what sequence, placement, or condition will let this unfold without force? Run the roles, ask your questions, whatever makes sense to you, and answer with one simple action. So, not just theory, but what is the practical step that makes sense in this role? Step 4, mark the boundary. Speak one sentence that begins with I will or I will not, keeping it specific and observable, like I will end the call at 10 past and send the follow-up, or I will not explain my no. And let your voice be steady. Speak true. Step 5, choose timing. Decide whether the move is now, later today, not today, and put it where it belongs, because strategic patience is a form of courage and flailing around is not exactly courageous or smart, right? And step 6, close with thanks. One breath for the land under your feet, one glance to the nearest threshold, a door, a window, a fence line, and a quiet, let it be enough. And then move. Take action. Now, this tiny practice it's not a charm. It's like a decision ritual that trains your attention towards sovereignty rather than spectacle. And over time, it builds a body memory of the roles of the Mórrígan and a habit of stepping where presence is required and only there. The strategy, remember? So the test for this is simple. You can ask yourself this at any time. Does the next action restore relationship to truth, timing and place? Or does it leak fear and lack of confidence and, disassociation. God knows we all do a bit of that on occasion, right? But the next action I'm just about to do this thing. Could be picking up your phone. It could be a non-action, because that's a choice too, of staying in bed, of staying on the couch, of not doing the work, of not reading the book, of not doing the guided journey. All of those things are also choices. They're also actions. So what does the next action do? Does it restore relationship to truth, timing and place, or does it leak fear? So the 3 pillars give a way to keep the ethics alive without becoming timid or fearful. And you can learn by reading a page and asking which role is working here and what was its strategy. Because the lore is a school of timing and placement. These are teaching tales. So experience by running the 5-minute check-in before a single decision each day, because repetition is how courage becomes ordinary. And then integrate by journaling 3 lines: the field, the act, and the outcome, which then turns your daily battle into feedback for tomorrow. Now, if you're doing this over a month, if you do it for 7 days running even, right? And honestly, if you miss a day, don't think that it's all messed up and you failed and all the rest of it. Just don't miss a second day, right? But over a month, over a lunar cycle, for example, this will make a quiet warrior of you. Not because you're shouting or loud or posing or pompous, but because you move when and where you must. So some of you, if you're anything like me, you might be thinking, what about the change that's like forced on us? If we have job loss, illness, grief, the collapse of the planet, whatever, where's the strategy then? Like, how do we strategize for chaos and change? And the answer, honestly, is that the field has shifted. And the first role is the land. And in those times, the poet-prophet tells the truth about capacity. The fighter chooses the smallest courage and keeps breath moving. The sorceress sets conditions for rest and care. And the land itself, our relationship with the land, so often ignored, becomes the commandment: tend the ground first. People, community, home, sovereignty, here, now. Because strategy doesn't mean control, it means relationship to reality. And reality includes seasons where holding the line looks like not forcing the harvest. Sometimes you have to sit back. Sometimes you can't engage in the chaos, in the change, because things are shifting too fast. But there's always strategy, because you're always in relationship to reality. So if there's one idea to carry forward from this episode, from the book in general, it's that sovereignty is not a crown. Sovereignty is a daily craft, and the Mórrígan's roles are tools for that craft. We keep our language honest. We keep our courage precise. We keep our outcomes ethical. And the land itself keeps all of it accountable to more than ego. So when you practice this craft in your ordinary life, the field gets cleaner for everyone nearby. And that is a quiet revolution that this goddess is asking for. So before we close, try the 5-minute check-in once more today, and this time on something small enough to complete before sunset. Set a timer, speak one truth, make one least necessary move, and put it into time. And then write 3 lines. So you've got, remember, your integration is the field. What is the battle? What is the field? What is the act? And what is the outcome? So that the spine of this practice remembers what the tongue did, what the heart felt, what the brain thought. And let the next crow on the fence be a reminder to look for edges and ask permission, not a superstition to feed or a fear to flee from. So, if this episode resonated, by all means, listen to more. But also remember that the book it draws from will serve your path well. And listeners have already said as much in their reviews. They've been like, this is the book on the Mórrígan. They've said it's scholarly without being pretentious. So please pick up a copy of The Mórrígan, Ireland's Goddess at your preferred bookseller, online, in real life. It's published by Llewellyn 2025, so should be available everywhere. And if it helps your work, please leave a review so that others can find a native, clear path to the great Queen's teachings. Slán go fóill, and I will see you next time.